Peace and blessings, family. Sister Ajali. The orange skies have made it over to the East Coast due to Canadian wildfires. That is very, very serious. But I'm here to offer a remedy and also to bring the data so that we can know. There's no need to panic if you know about radiation and you know about Dr. Bandashevsky because you've been listening to me say that name so much that you could say it without having to read it yourself. But according to his epic research on the results of the Chernobyl disaster, he found, number one, that the soil around Chernobyl is just as contaminated as it was right after the explosion, and that the forest fires, this is what I detected, or this is what I concluded with the fires, the wildfires in California. And the reason for those orange skies over there is because that was cesium skies. They were so heavily contaminated. And because the radiation, it doesn't go away. When you have something like plutonium, which has a reported half-life of over 24,000 years, which means it has a full life of about 100,000 years, it's not, a couple trees absorbing it is not going to nullify its radiological alpha particle decay. Thereby, when the trees burn up, that's one of the reasons why the fires in California were so incinerating, because it's not just plutonium that was in there. All the radionuclides would be in there, americium, thorium, so many. And thereby, it's all being released into the atmosphere. And we're all on the East Coast, just like the people on the West Coast, we're breathing it in. Now, to make this wholly adequate, I can say this is my diagnoses, not based on actually gathering the radiological details in air samples, but I think iodine, radioactive iodine, would be missing from the isotopes that would inevitably be in the smoke because it has such a short half-life, and it is only newly created through the fissioning process that goes on in nuclear facilities when there's been an accident. That's what I've read and researched. So you don't have, on the constant, I recommend just taking iodine supplementation, because Fukushima is thoroughly unchecked ongoing fissioning process, and I haven't heard anything to say that that's not the case. However, with the forest fires, that is just all of those longer lived isotopes that would now be being released into the atmosphere through the burnt foliage. Gratefully, nobody's going to drop dead right away unless they already have a very highly compromised immune system, in which case this, just the smoke inhalation alone, would be detrimental to their well-being. However, reading up on plutonium specifically, and the reason why I'm concentrating on it, because plutonium is particularly vicious when it's inhaled. I do conclude that that's one of the reasons why they're pushing marijuana and legalized it. They don't give a damn about people, and they want to kill everybody as much as possible. And cannabis has, of all phytoremediators, those are plants that absorb radiation, cannabis and hemp absorbs more radiation than any other vegetation that exists. And they use it around Chernobyl in order to absorb the radiation. It's just that there was so much of it. I hazard a guess that it only absorbs so much. However, you don't need a lot of plutonium in your lungs to have it be absolutely devastating. You just need one atom. There is no safe dosage of radiation as determined by UNSCEAR and other, like globally set up organizations there to study radiation. They found no safe dosage. And the nuclear physicists that I've read said the same exact thing. Rosalie Bertell said, when it comes to radiation, the question isn't, will it harm me? The question is, what kind of damage do you want to talk about? Now, that said, breathing this stuff in, when it comes to plutonium specifically, if you already have in your system adequate amount of iron, then your body is going to prefer iron, as it states in this paragraph of this article here. Because the human body still slightly prefers iron to plutonium for its biological processes, that preference can potentially provide avenues for treating plutonium exposure by flooding such receptors and preventing plutonium from being taken in by the cells, the study's authors noted. And one of the conclusions at the end of this article is that studies have found lower rates of cancer in nuclear plant workers. Now that I don't trust 100%. However, because of my research, which is in my book, Furnace of Affliction, those who would know how to specifically target radiation, they do not succumb to the inevitable outcomes that radiation causes, as just the general public that is not directly involved in radiological events or remediation of any sort. So it is more. That's one of the things I found. That's one of the reasons why they keep this quiet, is because there are remedies. How precise, how expansive, from what I've also read, they are quite successful. And so thereby, there's no reason to have a conniption fit. I want to highlight that when it comes to these orange skies, there's wildfires that have been happening all over the planet, but the intensity of the orange saturation is completely in line with how close a particular region is to a radiological deluge. And so these skies here on the East Coast are not as densely orange as the ones going up and down the West Coast. It is in line with how much radiation was deposited based on the jet streams, based on the contamination levels. And I have my little cursor down here. I want you to observe. This is for 1 month, and I want you to see it's, by the time this payload hits, it's already like 316. Let me go on back here. Try to get on over, because I want to make a point with a graph I'm going to show. There goes 315. The plume hadn't hit the United States in total. And so oftentimes they'll give, feel good data so that you go, oh, it's all okay. Now, I know it's like, what are you looking at? Right down here is the levels of plutonium that they say they found in Riverside, California, 3 15 11. So they didn't get a lot, even though there was a 98% chance plutonium was in that mix. And I'd imagine they were testing the air. That map from the National Oceanic Atomic Agency, the projection map, shows what came over in the air plumes. And so they were saying down here, this is measured in picocuries. Picocuries is a really small amount, even though all you need is one atom. Trust and believe. One atom is, whoa, nowhere near even a picocurie. But I think it's like 100 million or 10 million picocuries for every single one curie. And thereby, in that picocurie is going to be a lot of becquerels, maybe like, 5,000 becquerels of energy. And so that's going to be a lot of atoms. But at the same time, they give you if you're really trying to understand and you've got a knowledge of radiation, this will make you think that there's nothing unless you look at the full contents of what came over. And when it came over, when it was 3:15, it was still over the Pacific Ocean. By the time it's the 17th, that's when the hottest radiation, notice it's hitting the U.S. It's made a beeline all the way up over there. You can see it made a beeline up to Canada. So that stuff, for the most part, I would say it's been burned out of a lot of the boreal regions of the West Coast. But up in Canada, there's been fires. However, just like Dr. Bandashevsky was studying and concluding that those radionuclides were being re-released into the atmosphere. When you see orange skies and it's over on the East Coast, it's going to be a whole mix of popping stuff in there, and they're not going to tell people, even though on CNN they have this doctor, Tyler Wheeler, doing his obfuscating best. I'm not saying he knows that he's doing that, but I don't trust these dudes because there is a law and edict that says if they divulge information about radiation, they could be assassinated. And these guys are punks. They're not going to tell the truth. They don't give a damn about morality. They're punks, okay? And so he's not stating that there's radiation in there, but he's saying there's particulate matter that can embed itself into the lung tissue and cause problems. He's never going to give you any exacting data whatsoever. Most of these doctors are not even trained to understand radiological contamination, even though they have access to different protocols that in their studies have proven to be beneficial. I always state that being healthy is the most effective treatment for anything. And such as this whole paragraph right here on this article that you could just look it up. Role of plant-derived active constituents in cancer treatment and their mechanisms of action. And they state very clearly that what they find is that the chemotherapy and others, that they hinder cancer treatment and lead to other critical disorders. Since ancient time, plant-based medicines have been employed in clinical practice and have yielded good results with few side effects. Ta-da! I mean, that's just the information, all the data that I've always run across. And so I went out and I ran through this. I don't recommend that. And I could feel the just soot or whatever that's in my lungs. Gratefully, because I'm already on a constant program of eating healthy, doing the best for my body, I just naturally took an iron supplementation. I always do before my runs. And so I'm not deeply concerned. And one of the other things is that over in California, when this all jumped off, Nobody dropped dead instantly. So I'm just saying it's in our command to treat our body as if you already have cancer, so that if you got cancer, you would suddenly just be like, oh, hey, all right, I'm doing the right thing right now, okay? Just do that on a regular basis, and we got this. If you want all the details that I cannot share in this video, because otherwise this would be about 8 hours long, go get this book. You can find it at 25,000yearcycle.org, because there are specific details that it goes beyond eating healthy, as I'm sure the population in the Chernobyl region who were succumbing to the ailments radiation causes, they were eating real close to nature. They weren't eating Pop-Tarts, and because they were farmers. A lot of them were farmers. But they still succumbed to the ravages thereof. Whereas when the doctors, including Dr. Bandashevsky and Dr. Nesterenko, went on in there and treated them, they employed specific techniques that then yielded amazing results that they hide from us, that I put in this book because we need a document that stands the test of time, because I know I ain't going to be around for 100,000 years like plutonium, and definitely not like uranium-238, which is around for about 450 billion years. And radiation bioaccumulates in your system. You ain't just peeing this stuff out. It gets stuck up in there, and you have to know how to get it out. But if we keep getting this book and putting it all over the place, we good, okay? I pray we are good, because the Most High, He is the owner, the maker, the cream of all existence in ruling this joint here for truth and righteousness, okay? So I ain't worried about us as long as we do not allow the devil to have the last laugh. He should only have the final cough. I love you. Straight black family pride. And we are at least headed in the right direction, upwards. Peace and blessings.